Pursuit Of Podcast, a purely guest-centric show focusing on people and organizations that advance positive change. Positivity can be anywhere, and in a time of vast discord, the pursuit of is finding those who champion its causes loudest. Join us as we sit and learn about the pursuits of local leaders in their community. Let's go.
Hello, good people, and welcome to the Pursuit Of Podcast, where it's truly not us, it's you. I'm Ryan Buck, Artist Development, New Leonard Media. With me, as always, is the boss, Mr. Mark Wilson, President, New Leonard Media.
Oh, hey.
How are you?
I'm well.
Got your A&W, getting hydrated?
The sun was out today. It was good.
Okay, well, that's enough of that. Our guest today is Bill Watson, Youth Work Director. Welcome, Bill. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And I have to tell you, I appreciate you not adding the S to youth work, which is this constant struggle with folks in announcing our program or talking about our program. So just youth work, capital Y, capital W, no S. And I appreciate you guys knowing that.
Capital Y, capital W in one word, correct?
Correct. All one word.
And it's just something that people naturally go to Youth Works?
Yeah, it seems to be. Yeah, it does. I mean, invariably, almost in every circumstance, doesn't matter who we're talking to, whether it's the federal government and the National Park Service or other various partners that we have, they tend to go. Like today, we were on a phone call with AmeriCorps and some folks from the regional AmeriCorps and the national AmeriCorps, and they kept saying Youth Works, even though my coworker, my manager and AmeriCorps director, Amanda Scott, the image that was projected for her on the Zoom call very clearly showed youth work with a bunch of pictures of kids, but it's fine. I mean, we correct people, and there is a Youth Works, of course, and I'm sure there seem to be a number of youth work and youth work programs around the country.
Right.
I mean, it's a smart name, and we certainly weren't the wisest or the smartest that came up with it.
Hey, Bill, you went through all that to explain it, and later on, Ryan's gonna slip and say Youth Works.
Now he just put a worm in my
yep,
head.
It's going to be in his head now.
Well, I'm just going to click off at that point. I'm just going to forget
he's just going to drop the mic and
drop
peace out.
I'm gone. Yeah.
But Youth Work, from the website, I'm just going to start here, if that's okay, Bill.
Yeah.
Youth Work is a unique program designed to develop young people and their communities by completing critical projects for nonprofits and government agencies in northern and central Michigan. We all benefit from youth work. It's a really simple statement, but This is a big undertaking, correct?
It is, yeah. So we are a relatively new program to the agency that I work for. I've been there 3 years. I actually started working at Child and Family 20 years ago, and I was there at that time as a program manager, person that ran their youth incentive program, which was a juvenile justice funded project that partnered with Antrim and Leelanau in Grand Traverse County's family court divisions. And we had youth in the program that had been adjudicated, and most of them were 15, 16, and some 17-year-olds. Actually, no 17-year-olds, because at that point they were still being put into the adult correctional system. So that's changing in October, by the way, which is a good thing.
Okay.
We created programs for them that did experiential and recreational programs, and then also community service, which was part of their court mandate, was to do the community service. And then they had to be in our program, and they had to be drug tested. And most of the offenses were around some marijuana offense or some, what do they call them? They don't even do it anymore. Now it's a ticket. It's a minor in possession, MIP. Cigarettes even were something that could get a kid on probation back then.
For underage.
Which is crazy and good, but I'm not sure how to think about that. So we used to call it Hoods in the Woods, and I was their experiential program director. So I ran experiential education, which was backcountry camping and all sorts of different things. And then we linked it up with our program to do community service. And I left after about 3 years. Our program grant ended. I went to work for Traverse City High School with TCAPS, which is a fabulous school in this town that does great work. I really, really think they've done amazing stuff with youth and great people, folks that work there. And we started a Conservation Corps program out of there. And so our program model is designed off of the FDR's New Deal Civilian Conservation Corps model, which existed, of course, during the Depression, which took young men at that time and folks and put them into often into camps or camps that they built or other locations in order to do conservation stewardship work, things like planting trees and stream restoration and bridges and culverts and dams even and other stuff. Back then, it was all men. There were no women. It was also kind of a racially segregated, and not sort of, it was totally racially segregated. In fact, they had programs specifically for Native Americans, Native American men, and then they had programs for blacks, and then they had programs for whites. And all of these men, and I've met many of them, 10, 15 years ago. Most of them are probably past now, because they would have been, when I met them, they were in their 70s or 80s. And everyone I met that had worked in the Civilian Conservation Corps talked about it being like one of the most formative things they had ever done in their life. That meant a lot for guys who have done a lot by that point in their lives, had families and businesses and other stuff. But in addition to that, many of them went on to fight in the Second World War against fascism. And they experienced a lot, but they looked back at the time that they had in the Civilian Conservation Corps and the service that they performed for the country as something that impacted their lives and developed them as a person and as a man.
It's interesting that you mentioned FDR and the New Deal, because the journey of supporting our area's youth began here in 1937 with the creation of Child and Family Services of Northern Michigan. So it's interesting that there has been a focus on, would you say, at-risk youth for maybe a longer time than most people recognize.
Yeah, I don't think people understand it. I can't believe you really have done your research, that you recognize it. That Child and Family Services goes back that long. Child and Family Services, again, has been around since 1937. They were part of the orphan train, this movement where kids that were put either orphans or they were put into the system for various reasons in a foster care system were then lined up or connected up with organizations like Child and Family Services. And Child and Family was the first one in this area to do this sort of work. And then they were connected to putting kids into homes, often farmsteads and places. And sometimes it was because the farmers, they needed more people to do the work, but they also raised those children, right? And so Child and Family has been around for a very long time. For me, as a program director of this program, coming back to Child and Family Services with youth work, designing the program at that organization, being part of the AmeriCorps family, which I can tell you briefly about if you're interested, means that we're able to take kids directly from our population of young people who are in foster care, or aged out of foster care, or come from traumatic experiences or disenfranchised experiences from poverty, and give them service learning opportunities, work, paid service learning opportunities, paid work, as well as educational awards that they can use if they want to go to college or they want to go to trade school. I see our program, and I think we do as a whole, look at our program as, the service that we're doing, the work that we're doing, the work that the youth are doing. That's the tool, right? And our project are the kids, the young people that are in our program.
Wow.
So we're doing everything we can to support them in all parts of their life in order for them to become successful adults. And the connection to service, I think, is important because it directly pulls them into the idea that they're working for the community that they live in.
Right. Well, conservation and construction seem the primary focuses at youth work. And I know you have partners with the DNR, as you mentioned, National Park Service, United States Forest Service. And you mentioned Hoods in the Woods. What is it about the woods that makes it compelling in this area with these at-risk youth?
So we work with we have, I call our program our model to finance what we do, and partnerships that we nurture and find and bring into our program, a stone soup model. So I'm looking for, all of these partners, whether they're a township, a municipality, a tribal government, the national government, our federal government, our state government, county governments, and others. Everybody needs. You can't turn around and look in any direction and not see a project. In fact, my wife is always scolding me when we go on vacation. Like, we were in some fort down in Dauphin Island, down in Alabama, some years ago after having spent some time in New Orleans. And I'm like, they need a conservation corps here. We're at this fort and I'm looking, we could get, we could do all this. We could do all of that. So my mind's always spinning about how do we get youth engaged.
So that's your curse. You are so passionate about this.
It is a curse.
You
it is
can't
a curse in many ways.
go to a public forest or anything and not see what somebody could help with. Yeah. And that's, your wife is Gina, executive director, Youthwork, correct?
Is executive director, correct. Yeah.
And there's so much to be done, and if more people could see it and see it the way you're seeing it.
Yeah, there's some great folks out there that do it and we have some great partnerships. My friend Brian Bordages, who's, I met when he was working back 20 years ago with sometime around there with TCAPS as a coordinator. He's the one that sort of put me on the train here of conservation corps, which I really didn't know much about at that point. I was doing mostly working with adult probationers and domestic violence perpetrators. And then I found myself working with youth in the youth incentive program at CFS. And I blew me away, all of these different connections. We're planting trees, we're reducing our carbon footprint, we're improving trails, we're doing recycling and reducing our carbon footprint. We're taking young kids and young people who are traumatized and putting them into a connection with caring, loving adults who will guide and mentor them and scold them when they need to be scolded. And they're going to work hard, they're going to sweat, they're going to get blisters, they're going to get smelly and dirty. They're going to sit down when we spike camp, which when we're on a project where we go and we camp for whatever period of time our project is for, we will, we eat dinners together. We make our meals, we make our breakfast, we put together a lunch, we put, for us to eat in the field. We come back to wherever we're camping. We put together a dinner. We do the dishes. Our meal itself isn't like you just come in and grab your food and go where you want. We're at a table. We're in some fashion or another sitting down to what we call our family meal.
Bill, who's cooking these meals? Are you cooking these meals?
I cook a lot of them, and I'm a former chef, so I cook a fair amount of them.
Former chef. Yeah. Okay. Restaurant? We talking banquets?
Yeah, restaurants. I was 20 years. I spent a good part of my whole life actually as a child and a young adult. I grew up in restaurants and worked around restaurants. My mother and my stepfather were in the business, and they moved to Hawaii, Maui in 1970 when I was just 10, and I went with them and spent a couple of years. And then I've been back and forth a number of times. And then my wife, Gina, and I moved to Maui and lived there over a decade where we had our first son. And for most of that period of my life, from the time I was a child until I was early 30s, I was a chef, and I worked at some really wonderful restaurants. And then I owned a restaurant for a period of time in Detroit. I worked at the London Chop House in the city of Detroit. I worked at a place called the Van Dyke Place. The restaurant I opened was Aliette's in the southwest side of Detroit. And
So what you're saying is your campfire meals have a very high standard if anybody knows your culinary pedigree.
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
When we we worked on South Box Island last summer, and we go out there for a couple of weeks a year at least, and we're trying to negotiate and work with the Fox Island Lighthouse Association to be involved with operating out there up to 8 weeks or longer in the future. My goal is to turn South Fox Island, not only, which is owned partially by the DNR and David Johnson, who's up in Bay Harbor developer and community. It's a significant portion of it, but the island lends itself to this place to do a lot of healing and to have a lot of introspection when you're there, because you don't have good Wi-Fi. If you don't have any Wi-Fi, you don't have good cell coverage, and you're 30 miles, 25 miles from any other land.
Well, that's okay. You don't need your cell phone to give back to the planet, right?
Right. So we're on an island, we're cooking meals together. And I make a point, all of our program staff have gotten this drilled in them and figured it out. And we put together, for Spike Crews, we put together menus and kitchens, and that would allow for them to prepare these menus.
That's incredible.
With all that said, because Youthwork actually has done culinary training.
We do. Yeah. So the idea is that when we go out to these islands, we're eating really healthy, good meals, fresh vegetables, meats and grains, and they're nutritious and delicious. And all of our teams eat really well. We spend a lot of money on those meals because we see that the meals, our community, are sort of communal event for all of the kids to participate in. And then not only in preparing them, but cleaning up afterwards, and then eating a treat afterwards around the bonfire
Right.
and hanging out. And
So
so,
your
go
your
ahead.
your business model
Yep.
is, because I want to focus on that. The business model is really unique to me, specifically the element of membership.
hmm
Can you talk through that? There are requirements to becoming a member, correct?
So we're not a business. We're not a company in that respect. We are an AmeriCorps program, and AmeriCorps is a federal program. And actually, AmeriCorps itself was created under Bill Clinton, as was Vista. And back in the day when Kennedy was president, he created the program. I'm losing my memory here, but they created the program for young people to go to Peace Corps. They created the program to go out to other countries and serve in those countries, with the idea that promoting America in these places and helping other countries thrive was going to support our country as a whole, to reduce conflict and to reduce other costs associated with managing things on the world stage. And so at some point they created AmeriCorps and Vista, which was, I believe that I said, is going back to Clinton and AmeriCorps. So our members, our youth, our young people 17 to 26, we can go to 35. We've talked about putting a veterans corps together.
Wow.
But most of our members are the ages of about 18 to 23. But we have this high end and this low end of ages in which people can participate. So they come on and they do what's called a term of service. And the term of service means it feels like a job. It smells like a job to us because they're working hard. They get paid like a job. They earn this educational award or stipend that they can use up to 7 years after they've completed their term of service with us. They can serve up to 2 years, or at least they can serve, I think it is 3,400 hours over, a number of years, if that's how it lines up. But they can only do that amount of time, and they can earn up to $6,000 a year in a scholarship or educational award that
Sure.
can be used at accredited schools like NMC or other places, and it can be used for certifications and equipment and tools. I mean, there's some finagling you have to do with the college to be able to spend it on those things, but there's a lot of different things that they can use to support themselves if they're going to go on to college or some post-secondary educational experience.
Right.
So we call them members they're not hired in the same sense. If they were to come on as technically an employee, they receive a stipend that equates to what is right now the federal minimum wage. It was $10.10 an hour, so a little over about $400 a week. They do a term of service from 8 weeks at 40 hours a week to as much as 1 year, which is 40 hours a week, for just under 40 hours a week for $1,700. There's a lot of different things we can do.
And is the stipend, is that taxed?
They do pay taxes, which I just don't get. Like, I don't know why we're charging taxes for a program that the federal government created in order to sustain these folks. And it is a legislative goal of mine and a lot of other people that are in this work to eliminate that. Like, don't tax these people. Don't tax the educational award. Just pay them and call it good, So we are working on that.
Yeah.
It is a benefit to folks who are needing or collecting some SSI benefits, and because it's considered exempt. So if you get a job and you're getting SSI, it can frequently interfere with what they're giving you, even though you're only doing this for maybe a short term of 8 weeks. In the instance of AmeriCorps, unlike a job, it won't interfere with that. So that helps youth. Like I said, some of the youth are not, and many of them are youth that come to us that we partner with the ISD and others, Michigan Rehabilitation Services and others, to have youth in our program that have cognitive and learning disabilities. So we have a lot of kids on the autism spectrum, kids who experience trauma, kids with some other related issues, kids who are bipolar disorder, kids who have been schizophrenic. And if they're able to, if they're working
this is
their
amazing.
medications and they're getting the treatment and services that they need, they can be very successful in our program. We have one young man who's just done unbelievable, and I'm hopeful this guy's going to get hired by. I'm certain he's going to get hired by a construction company off of our program at the end of this summer season. So
That's incredible. So throughout a member term, they're intentionally kept on the same team
Yeah,
consistently. Is that
yeah.
true?
If they're in there on a term,
And
they
why is
stay
that
with
important?
that team leader. So the mentoring relationship is important. And then there are other folks that they're working with are also part of their family, their community, their community that they're working with. Sometimes we combine teams on projects, particularly last year with COVID. Well, I mean, we're still dealing with COVID, so we'll probably still be dealing with it this year. But last summer and in the fall and spring, we would normally have 4 to 5 young people with an adult crew supervisor or 2 supervisors. And last summer, we couldn't do that because we didn't want to pack our trucks too closely with people. It was enough to have 2, 3, and 4 people in them. And we're trying to figure that out for this year, too. I mean, everybody was masked. We had significant, stringent COVID protocols. We didn't have any problems this year. We were really, really fortunate. We had a couple instances in the late fall where kids were exposed at school, and it created issues where we had to be prepared and deal with some quarantining issues, but no one got it. And that was really amazing. Sometimes our work requires 3 or 4 people on a job. Sometimes it requires 8 or 10. Sometimes you just need a bunch of grunts. You got to do a lot of work. Like when we're at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, we've worked in 4 national parks in Michigan. We regularly work in those 4 each year. I'm hoping we're working towards funding and some other things towards working down at River Raisin, which is a battlefield national park down in Monroe. And then also at Indiana Dunes. So those would be short duration projects, 2 to 4 weeks. Teams would go down and spike and live down there for 2 weeks. And I want to do that mostly because of the experience that we're giving kids to go somewhere else,
right?
Experience other people. And now our boundaries, our geographic range is expanding. Our program currently is mostly, white rural youth, some Native American youth, probably about 10 or 15% of our 70 or 80 or 100 members a year are Native American youth, a handful of African American kids, and some Hispanic. And we're hoping, we worked this year down in Saginaw, and what I'm hoping we can do is to begin breaking down some boundaries by having projects down in urban areas that will allow for us to work with African American youth or other folks. And then also up here, increase our membership and the number of our members through the Native American communities, and begin to try to do some cross-pollination and blending of teams working in these areas and giving them all opportunities to meet and talk and work together and break down some of the issues I think that exist right now between a lot of folks, particularly between urban and rural, which is a real struggle, I think, in our country.
Well, it's interesting, between conservation and construction, you have a lot of areas covered. And you mentioned AmeriCorps and you mentioned financing, and youth work is partially supported by a federal AmeriCorps grant. So for those unaware of how grants work and how they are attained, or it's just like, you're getting free money, can you kind of explain how important that grant is to youth work?
AmeriCorps gives us a percentage of money per member, and it doesn't come close to what is required to put those members in the field and do their service. We're different than a lot of AmeriCorps members. Like some places, like the Vista AmeriCorps program, which are volunteers in service to America, and then there's AmeriCorps Direct Service. We're AmeriCorps Direct Service. Vista does work and we have a Vista grant too, our program does. But Vista's work on capacity building. They write grants. They help you with coordination. They help you with, dealing with the documentation and paperwork you need to run your program, build relationships with community partners and whatnot. AmeriCorps members get dirty. They put on steel-toe boots, or at least ours do, get down and dirty and do the work. There are AmeriCorps programs where folks do direct service, where they, like Food Corps, or there are other ones that do, teach in the schools, like, what is it? Teach for America. That's an AmeriCorps program, right? So those members serve as AmeriCorps members, right, and they serve as teachers in schools, and that can't find teachers to work, right? And then those people can go on to become teachers later is the ultimate goal. Food Corps teaches nutrition and helps schools begin to look at putting food into their cafeterias that is farm to table, and supporting local farmers and nutritious and all, and getting kids used to like eating nutritious food versus eating just fast food and these sorts of things. So that's AmeriCorps, hands on, get dirty, pick up your tool belt every day, go to work. And for us, it's pick up your tool belt, pick up your steel toe boots, put them on, put on your uniforms.
Now, there are different ways to support youth work. You can volunteer. You can donate, correct, on the website, which is cfsnwmi.org/youthwork. If anybody wanted to support youth work, they could go on the website and make a donation. They could contribute.
Yeah, they certainly
in other
can.
ways
So
as
they
well?
could contribute directly to the agency and the organization. There's numerous departments and programs that are worthwhile to earmark your funds for if you want, or if you want to directly just support youth work, you can stipulate that. We definitely are interested in drawing in. It's challenging right now, of course, because of COVID, as it is for anybody who works with partners or not just partners, but I mean volunteers, that brings volunteers onto their work sites and such, can be challenging. So we will work with folks that want to be in the field with us. We do on occasion, and we, are very COVID safe, but it really is about having that conversation and making sure people want to be in the field with us. But we'd encourage it, at least visit us and see some of the work we've done.
Sure.
And then there's often, like, you can select an item. Like we have sort of a wants list. We have a list of things that we occasionally need. Gift cards and a variety of things people can buy from the local businesses we buy from, for tools and equipment and personal protective equipment and stuff, which I could provide you guys at some point, and you can list that if you want.
Right. Well, as I understand it, the more financial support youth work receives, the less you have to charge for services.
So that is part of it. I was explaining this to my son tonight. I was talking about what we have to do in order to have our program out working and operating in the field. So AmeriCorps will give us about a third. We get about a third of what our actual costs are, but we don't always get all of that money, because the money is based upon the number of youth that we bring into the program. So for some reason, like with COVID, we're unable to, we asked for 140 slots this year. And if at the end of this year, 2021, the 2020-21 season, we're unable to put that 140 out in the field to do the work, we'll only receive, the percentage of dollars that were earmarked for the amount of young people that served. So we could find ourselves, and again, COVID has impacted this, where we couldn't field 140 slots. We only fielded 80 or 90 or 100. And so the money that was earmarked for those other 30 or 40 goes back. We don't get to keep that. And the rest of the cost of the program, which is the other 75 or 80% of running the program to do the work, comes from fee-for-service projects where we get hired by a municipality, or they come from grants, or they come from donors. And our fees for doing the work we keep at as low as we possibly can, in part because we're passing on the AmeriCorps benefit, the AmeriCorps funding that we receive, to our partners. So the National Park Service, or the Forest Service, or Grand Traverse County Parks and Rec, or Traverse City Parks and Rec, we say, this is what it actually costs us to do this work. We're going to pull 25% off of that cost or better, because we get this money from AmeriCorps. And now it's cheaper for you to hire us if you're willing to do it and can find the funding to do it at that level. They have to understand that they're bringing people on to do these projects. We train them and we manage them, but we're also bringing on often young people, at least for their first term of service, that are the kids that nobody's going to hire, right? Most of the kids we bring on initially, many of them, no business is going to hire them, and they're not going to last a week because of all of the other issues they have going on in their life, the trauma, the poverty, the cognitive issues, other things that they've experienced. We get them
Sure.
at the end of their term of service. We turn kids into you want to hire, and we will vet them. We will reference them and give them references for working with you. They're going to show up and know how to get up for work. They're going to be there every day. They're going to wear their personal protective equipment. They're going to be appropriate. Like, they're going to know not to swear, not to be lighting cigarettes up everywhere, not to be doing all these different behaviors that you don't need your employee doing that is impacting your business, right?
These are life and survival skills. And I have to say, I saw a video. It was an Up North Live, story from March 2019.
Yeah.
And it featured a young man named Zach. And what struck me about that was he looked so sincerely in the camera, and he said, "This is my dream job." And, you couple that with the story you told me about the youth who might be getting a construction job in earnest, and you're really changing the trajectory of some of these lives. Does that keep you inspired? Is that enough to keep you inspired on a daily basis, those kind of stories?
It ain't the paycheck. It's not the money. I can promise you. I love what I do as much as it drives me crazy. I love kids, and I love teenagers in particular. I just think they're really the greatest. People really don't give them all of the attention they deserve and acknowledge them in the way they need to be. I love going when I go to the grocery store, I talk to the kid bagging my groceries. I engage him, and I got into a joking thing with the kid about Pink Floyd and whether it was if you don't eat your meat or if you don't eat your beets, because I was buying beets, and we got into this whole thing together. And it was so good to engage that kid. At first, he was stunned that I was even talking to him, and that's one thing our folks do. The other thing we've done, we do a really good job at in order to work with that population, is we have perfected the art of sarcasm to a level that we should be given like major financial awards for it, because these people, that population, are some of the most sarcastic characters you'll ever work with.
Absolutely.
And we love that. We appreciate that, right? We encourage it often, but we also encourage loyalty. We also encourage service. We encourage kindness and empathy for the others and part of your team and the people that we're serving. We see some tragic stuff sometimes with folks we serve with, because we do a lot of different things. We serve in various crisis situations and disasters. We're working towards creating a disaster corps, which will allow for us to be able to respond to disasters, not only in Michigan, but around the country, like hurricanes and tornadoes and other things. We're working now. I'm reaching out to the health department about how maybe we can get back to work right now sooner by volunteering and putting members in our people in place to be able to support the vaccinations that are going to take that is being done locally, because they need just grunt help to make sure that this stuff happens in the way they want it to and expeditiously for our community. Right. We would like to help more with some of our homeless shelters and our food rescue folks. The concern right now, particularly for our leaders, is the COVID virus. So we're working on trying to get those folks at least vaccinated as soon as possible. And then we can put more volunteers into service, and that's been one of our challenges. Our program has a couple of different program areas right now. We have a culinary program and project, which we started at Hickory Hill Ski Area, teaching culinary skills and giving certifications around culinary work. That has been put on hold because of COVID this year, so we haven't been able to do that. We still have much bigger plans about being able to serve the Traverse City's Park and Rec Department down at Clinch Park and at Hickory. And then also we're talking to the county about a project that would involve our partnering with them, and some of it will include some culinary services. That's my love, because that's what I did for a long time, right? We have a construction program that's a partnership with the Northern Michigan Carpenters Union, as well as in conversations right now. We know this is going to happen once we get through the next couple of months and some COVID issues, to be able to open things up for us to start a construction trades program that will take young people and train them between 8 and 16 weeks, working with Habitat for Humanity and working with the Home Builders Association, NMC, and some others to be able to do restoration work and be able to do like honey-do list fixes for folks who are connected to Habitat, and then also build new homes with them. And they'll leave with a certification and a certificate, as well as an industry recognized certification. That might be 30-hour OSHA, it might be a lead awareness certification, it could be some other thing. They'll leave our program with not only the money they needed to be able to survive while doing this training and getting the knowledge of this work, they'll leave with an educational award they can take to NMC and they can utilize to get, pay for a certification that often are $300, $400, $500, $1,000 to get. And we're partnering with the business community, the contractors in our area, to hire young people off of our teams. Like, this kid has done this. This young person has done this. They've completed this certification and this training. They have our certificate. Will you hire them? We're looking for the construction businesses to support our program and helping us, maybe perhaps paying like a headhunting fee for us to provide folks that we vetted, something they might pay to the program, invest in the program. If that person stays with them after, X amount of time, 3 months or 6 months, they stay with them and they've now got a good carpenter on their hands, right? Or some other project person that they need and require. So there's a lot of different things. And then we have our conservation corps, which is like, we're just, that program is hugely busy from like mid-April till the snow, deep until the snow flies. We stay as busy as we possibly can with that. And I can see that also expanding. We want to create a landscaping business that will serve the community, like nonprofits and municipalities, to provide inexpensive services to them that then will allow for us to pass young people off to the landscaping community with a certificate and a vetting. Like, I know this kid's going to show up for you. You're not going to get stiffed. I think it'll go great. And if he does stiff you, you can call us and we'll harass the kid about like what's going on. We're going to be able to.
Well, you're doing so much to lessen the stigmas on troubled youth, on teenagers, on work ethic, which is great. And I can't thank you enough, Bill, for being here. I want to just again reconfirm that the website is cfsnwmi.org/youthwork. And I wanted to end on a congratulatory note, as I understand that YouthWork in 2020 was one of only 4 programs nationwide and the only program in Michigan to be awarded Project of the Year from the Core Network. Congratulations on that.
It was very, very, very much appreciated, and we really appreciate the acknowledgement for that. We have a number of members that are this year may be selected for Core Members of the Year, so they will be, one of a handful of young people of some 26,000 youth and young people and that do this sort of work around the country that will get selected based upon the level of service and the type of service they did and how much impact they've had on others through their service. So we're hoping to hear about that pretty soon. It's one of the best things that came out of the New Deal, in my opinion. And I think that we may see more emphasis on this with President Biden in office and the move towards programs along the lines of what took place under the American Recovery and Investment Act under the Obama administration. And I think that there's no end to the work that has to be done. I can't take a walk and not say, oh my God, crew here for 3 weeks or a month this would be done.
You must be rough on your own backyard. I mean, can you at least turn it off?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I work too much to be able to pay attention to my home, so it doesn't work.
I gotcha.
I'll tell you one new project we're working on, and this is, if you have a moment, this is we're working. We're going to have a second conversation with folks out of a farm out of the downstate area called City Girl Farm, and they are a goat farm that does a number of things. And one of the things that they do and have done even up here is they utilize and run goats out on, federal and conservancy lands and other places where they're managing invasive species. So the goats do the work, right? And you don't have to run the chainsaws very much or as much, and you don't have to run the spray herbicides and whatnot. And we're trying to work towards a partnership with them that would allow for us to increase their number of goat herds or the amount of their goats and goat herds in order to go out and do invasive species control around the state with young people and a team leader.
Wow.
Managing them, learning the animal husbandry, and at the same time making the connection to animals. We've done a lot of work with Peace Ranch and with the other folks that are do equine therapy, and it has been a really good experience for our kids to have that connection to
That's incredible.
to animals while they're doing the work. So that's another new project. And if anybody has any interest, look up Homegirl and Homeboy Industries. Father Gregory Boyle out in East LA and LA County now, and they do amazing work. And he's been around for a long time, and he is a personal hero to me. He's a Jesuit priest that has done incredible work with gang members, and we model ourselves and are trying to get to a point where we can develop social enterprises that will support these youth and support our program to be sustainable and do really good work around our community. So excited about all of it.
Well, I have to say, this has probably been the most educational episode we've had. And Bill, thank you so much for your pursuits, and to all those who pursue along with you, helping young people find value. They're finding friendships and new skills with which they can improve their lives and their communities. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thanks so much. I'll look forward to talking to you soon, Mark, and meeting you face to face, Ryan, at some point.
And to you listeners, thank you all for listening and for pursuing the positive. Thank you, Mark.
And there it is, Youth Work, AmeriCorps, Child and Family Services of Northwestern Michigan. For more information, visit cfsnwmi.org/youthwork. Spelled exactly how Bill said in the beginning of the episode. There will be a link in the description. And we also want to give a big shout out to our supporters, Tin Lid Hat Company, tinlidco.com, and Herb and Meds in Traverse City, Michigan. herbandmeds.com. Use promo code ThePursuitOf for 40% off to our listeners. For any production inquiries, check out newleonard.com.